Today we've got a great revenge story about playing the long game. We'll get into that in a bit, but first, stopped a guy from flicking cigarettes from his property into the park with petty revenge. This happened many years ago. There's a park that I like to walk my dog in with a creek and lots of trees. It's quite nice. The entry to the park is a little path that borders someone's backyard, which is separated by a wooden fence about 7 feet tall. I noticed over a period of weeks a disgusting habit that the dweller of the property had. There were dozens of cigarette butts strewn about on the grass. Instead of properly disposing of the butts, the dweller's usual habit was to flick them over the fence into the park. One evening, I was going through the path. A lit cigarette butt flew over the fence and almost hit me in the eye. That was the last straw. Next time I went through the path, I peeked through the boards of the fence and didn't see anyone in the backyard, then picked up all the dozens of butts and quickly chucked them over the fence into their yard. I haven't seen any more butts in the park again. I feel like if I saw that and I were OP, I would find a day where I just didn't have anything going on. I would grab a bucket and pick up one of those $4 grabbers off of Amazon. Maybe even one of the cutesy little dinosaur ones that chomp down at the end to pick stuff up. Just go and pick up all those cigarette butts and just chuck them right back over the fence. What's the guy gonna do, complain about littering? Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. My DNA is literally all over these cigarette butts anyways. Hot Opportunity 5664 commented, in the army, 70s, picking up cigarette butts was the worst to be made to do, especially when I don't smoke. Psycho MOTM commented, worked in a restaurant in the late 80s. Manager asked me to pick up the cigarette butts out in the parking lot and sidewalk. Told him to get one of the smokers who worked there to do it. Their nasty habit, not mine. Manager, like most in the restaurant biz back in those days, also smoked. Also took non-cigarette breaks almost as frequently as the nicotine addicts. Got called out for it by the same manager. Asked him why they get additional breaks and I don't. I didn't abuse it, so he left me alone about it. Sometimes you just need a breather after a rush. Large or small. To be fair, the manager was a pretty good guy. He saw the point I was making and didn't power trip or micromanage. Also, hi, I'm Steven, and if you guys enjoy awesome stories of revenge, it would be amazing if you left a like or left a review if you're listening to my podcast. That said, our next story is Animal Crossing Revenge. So for context, in my childhood when I was 6 to 8, the original Nintendo DS was all the rage. Animal Crossing Wild World was one of the many loved games of the collection, but I had to share it with my older sister due to it being so expensive at the time. One day, my arrogant at-the-time sis had said something to tick me off. Don't hate me for not remembering what it was over. We fought a lot as kids and I was considered the troublemaker. My mom had called her into another room and she left her DS on the couch. Now, as some of you may or not know, Animal Crossing had a punishing feature for those who didn't save the game. First time round, you got a warning, but screw the 3 strikes you're out rule. Rossetti the Mole was the character who you would meet and make you apologize over and over for practically an hour before you got back to the actual gameplay. In addition to this, the game card is easy to remove from the receiver just by pressing down and the card would pop up or catapult out, depending on how careful you were or not. But if you did this while the little console was powered on and a game in session, it would freeze up everything and you would have to fully reboot it, and the game would not automatically save. Back to the story, I saw her DS and decided to get back at her for being a brat. I pressed on the game cartridge, popped it out, and pressed again quickly to put it back in. Didn't even pack up the DS from the couch, and I easily left. Sister came back, opened the DS, and the look of pure horror on her face when she saw the screens were frozen was so worth the wait. She didn't pick up the game for months. As a kid playing those games, losing a lot of progress like that is one of the most devastating things. Almost as devastating as it is nowadays for a kid to see a Nintendo DS and go, "What is that thing? Ooh, I think I feel that one in my knees." Slay La Vie commented, I was just thinking of Rossetti this morning and how dumb I must have been for never being able to get past him efficiently. He was the worst. You definitely got her back. Our next story is a folder for every document. I had a manager who was quite pedantic about everything. Every document must be put into its own folder and placed on his desk for signature before having to send it out myself. There were 10 of us who had to do this, so anonymity wasn't easy. So one day I sprayed the paper with fart spray and closed it. Testing the air around me didn't have any indication that anything nefarious was hidden in the folder, so I placed it on his desk. Others did the same and my prank was set. Mid-afternoon, I heard a "What the freak is that smell?" and he threw the folder out of his office into the hallway. That gagged workers closer to his office and made him quite popular. It never changed how we did business, but it did make him paranoid that it would happen again. Hey, that guy might be super freaking annoying, but you know what he's not going to be? Somebody that causes a major organization or security issue. I can only imagine it sucks working with them, but gosh darn it, do they not let the company down. Gel1957 commented, "I used to do insurance billing. Our manager insisted he had to sign every claim. One day we typed, yes, before computers, an extremely bogus claim. He signed it, we framed it, went to using a rubber stamp of his signature to eventually signing claims ourselves. Electronic claim submission was a godsend." Our next story is, take your dog's poop back. I live in a small cul-de-sac off a main road. Our neighbors to one side have been nothing but a thorn in our side since they adopted 2 medium to large breed dogs that they just let roam all over the cul-de-sac. Mainly, they let them crap on any and every front lawn and don't bother picking it up. It's been a thing where I've made a point not to let my own dog poop on the front lawn, so I know if I find a pile out there, it wasn't my dog. It's been such a problem that I've made a post about it here before. Well, it happened again. Doing some pruning in the front yard, I find 2 piles off to one side. I've been having some insomnia the last couple of nights, so I know this is the perfect time to return the piles their dogs so generously left behind. At about 1 a.m., I went outside with baggie in hand, and instead of putting it in their garbage can like last time, I tossed those piles directly into the middle of their driveway. No bag, just poop. One kind of bounced and rolled under a car, but the other was a firm splat onto the pavement right next to the driver's side door of a different car. This morning over coffee, I heard a disgruntled expletive and subsequent hose splashing. While I'm sure this won't stop the poops from coming, I think I've found my new favorite way to return their dog's crap. As long as you know it's their dog that's providing the ammo, I say it's fair game to send it flying on back to their property. Just, don't let the popo see. Rocket Manscaped commented, "I have a neighbor who lets her dog run around our cul-de-sac pooping. When I tell her to stop, I get the no habla, so I started throwing it on her roof, right above her front door. It doesn't rain much here, but when it does, it brings me a smile." Our next story is petty revenge to a public speakerphone user. Simple story today. I got on the 26th floor elevator and a man was having a speakerphone conversation on the elevator ride. I decided it was annoying, so I put on Walk by Pantera full blast. Him and I were the only people on the elevator ride. He asked me to put it down. I told him to shut off his speakerphone and put his phone to his ear if he wants me to shut off the music. I said my music is as annoying as your conversation. He called me a jerk. I smiled and said, "Cool, man," and we went our separate ways. I got a little joy from that encounter. 26th floor, eh? OP's either staying in a very tall building or they're giving us a subtle flex there. Minflick commented, "My favorite story about these inconsiderate fools is when bystanders respond to the phone call and interact with the person on the other end. It gets pretty funny." Our next story is, no pen? That's a problem. I worked for a board, I got a new chair, and I quickly found out he never carried a pen. He always had things to sign during meetings. At the first meeting when he was chair, I was seated next to him. When it was time to sign something, without looking at me or asking, he simply put his hand out for me to hand him a pen. He was a professional and an attorney. He never had a pen. So at a subsequent meeting, I got my petty revenge. The nature of the organization meant that several members had disabilities. I deliberately set out the name plaques before the meeting and seated him between a person with a disability who was unable to wield a pen and the sign language interpreter. The look of desperation when he realized no one was near him to hand him a pen was priceless. This was several years ago and it still gives me glee. I really love this comment by Merritt Jean. It says, "I thought you were going to hand him an obnoxious novelty pen, preferably with a large pink plumage attached that waved as he wrote." You know, back when fidget spinners were all the rage, somebody gave me a pen that had a whole just fidget spinner on the top. Imagine pulling that out, giving it a good spin so it's spinning really good on those bearings and handing it over. Not a Calligrapher 49 commented, "Or a neon pink gel pen from the early 2000s. or a pen covered in Disney characters, or one of the ones where you have to click a minuscule tab down at the top to select the color you want to use. So many delicious options. Our next story is, I moved on from a guy who kept ghosting me and ignoring me. 1 year after he moves away, he texts me wanting to reconnect. Guy I had a thing for kept ghosting me, so I moved on with my life. A year later, messages me out of the blue. I had a neighbor 3 years ago who I used to text back and forth a lot. He would talk about hanging out and whatnot, but anytime I'd offer a time and day I'm available, it would be crickets. One time I even came by and gave him some extra cookies I made and he wouldn't respond. I had texted him earlier that morning and he said I could come by at a certain time. When I did, crickets. The following day I still had the cookies, and when he saw me, I told him I'd been looking for him to give me the cookies. I gave him the cookies and he apparently liked them a lot. I admit I had a bit of a thing for him. One day he did decide to hang out with me. He worked from home, so we decided it would be 6 p.m. So an hour before, I confirm and he doesn't answer. An hour later, he texts me that he's busy with his Twitch stream, and then an hour later, he even texts me that he needs time to change. We didn't go out until around 9:30 p.m., and by that point, I was pretty upset since I put in a lot of effort to look good. We hung out one more time after that, but he would ask me for selfies, what I was wearing, and it was just extremely obvious that he just wanted sex. At some point, I stopped pining for him because I wasn't going to waste my time on someone who didn't respect my time. At some point 2 years ago, he texted me he was moving away and I wished him well. About 2 months ago, he texted me for the first time since he left. He kept going on and on about how he missed me, how he wanted me to make my cookies for him, and how I should send selfies of myself. He wanted to hang out, and it was then that I remembered the constant ghosting, the plans that would always follow through, the times he made me wait. I'd been out of town a couple of times with work on the nights he wanted to hang out. For the past 2 months, I'd gone back and forth with him, pushing the dates that we could hang out and reconnect back, and never sent any photos of myself. I would take days to reply to him. Part of it was that I was petty, but another part of it was that he no longer had any weight in my life anymore. I'd never gotten an apology before when he'd promise a time and either cancel or make me wait long enough. Instead, he would always tell me I'm just being emotional and brush it off. After a little over 2 months of doing the same thing to him that he did to me, today he sent me a message that said, "Cool then, I'm done being nice." I just thumbs upped it and blocked him. I mean, honestly, his reaction at the end tells you all you need to know about his intentions anyways. Cool then, I'm done being nice. Well, you finally let him on long enough that he finally dropped the veil. Even though OP could see right through it to begin with, Chrissy Cole 87 commented, "The most freeing moment in life is when you stop chasing someone who would never chase you back." This guy sounds like an absolute narcissist who liked how he used to be able to manipulate you using your feelings for him. Even his last response of, "I'm done being nice," is just all sad manipulation. He expected you to be like, "Oh no, wait, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to." I'm so proud of you for seeing through the bull. I knew someone exactly like that. After my last relationship ended, I reconnected with my ex. I know. And he started telling me how he was so happy I was single and that he'd love to see where things could go with us again. I spent 3 years of my life waiting around to see if this guy would pull the trigger. He made it obvious time and time again that he wanted only sex from me, which I was stupidly giving him, and that we were just friends. Anytime I would try to recoil, he would lay it on just thick enough to keep me around, manipulating me and my feelings on and on. Eventually, I moved on and started dating someone else, and then my ex blocks me on everything and goes around telling all our friends that I broke his heart. Even down to the very last day, he still made himself the victim and could care less about my feelings. It boggled my mind for a while until I finally let it go because trying to make it make sense would hurt my brain. I laugh about it now. That was years ago, and I'm now with a man that makes me happier than I've ever been. Good on you for getting your petty revenge on this D-bag. Going on living our best lives and letting men like this be butthurt about it is the best feeling around. OP responded saying, "Thank you for sharing your story. It took me a while to see through this guy's BS as well, but better late than never, and it sounds like the two of us are all the happier for it." Our next story is, "You think you're important? I don't think so." This was my first job just out of high school. It was a tiny company that printed books, and it was way back in the dark ages, 1970. In my department, books were translated from English to Hebrew, typed, graphics were added, physical cut paste, actual cutting and gluing, then the pages were sent to be photographed and printed. I was hired as a non-professional graphic artist, cutting and pasting, which I was okay but not great at, but after a while, I was also given the job of moving the stuff from person to person. Getting the book from the translator to the typist, then to the proofreader, then to the graphic artists, etc. Nothing super high in the ladder, but nice responsibility for an 18-year-old. The editing and proofing were outsourced and I worked primarily with two men. One was a professor, well known in his field and a senior at the university, the other a doctorand. They were supposed to pick up and bring back the stuff, but of course it was more convenient if I brought it to them and picked it up, which I was allowed to do. The professor was always professional, polite, friendly without being pushy, available and on time when we scheduled anything. The doctorand thought he pooped gold. Very self-important, unpleasant, unreliable, insistent on getting served. Well, surprise, surprise, for the professor, I always delivered and picked up. The doctorand had to pick up and deliver because it wasn't my job to move outside the office. Very minor revenge, but satisfying. I only worked there half a year because I was then drafted into the army, but I still remember that place fondly. Yeah, this story is definitely very old school. I actually got some secondary education in graphic design and printing processes, and there was some old school stuff being shared and even kind of being taught and kind of used for fun, but we definitely were far from being taught anything about physical cut and pasting for anything to do with printing. Amateur Biotic commented, "Mechanicals! I have not thought of that word in a long time. Paste-ups and mechanicals was the name of the course I took in art school." Next Edge commented, "Yeah, that brought back memories. Out of high school, I got hired for doing the artwork for business cards. I can still smell the hot waxer, and they pushed you to do hundreds of different cards a day to get them ready for the stat camera. Then after working there for a year or so, doing business cards, ads, whatever work I was given, I thought maybe I should actually learn this the right way, as they give minimal instruction. I went to the local college for a class on mechanicals and paste-up. First day, they said bring the tools next class. Tech pens, blades, etc. So the professor gave out all the things we're supposed to do. Business card, a magazine ad, and a bunch of other stuff, so I thought, cool, and dug in. End of class, I finished it all and handed it in. The professor just looks at me and I'm thinking I did something wrong. Then he said, those were the projects for the whole semester. I really don't think you should be in this class. At that point, I realized the difference between actual work and jobs and college. Not telling the story to stroke my ego, but I have to say the memory does make me smile. Also, I just have to chime back in and say that I fully agree with what they just said here. That graphic design and printing class that I went to was like a half-year course on how to just become believable enough to fake it till you make it to get a job, and then you just figure out as you go. This next story is, oh, I played the long game. I am by no means an expert or pro at revenge, but I am a patient person. I disclosed this to a friend and they directed me here. Throwaway for obvious reasons. It's a long read, but the setup and backstory are important. 7 years ago, I was lucky enough to be able to buy my own place. I had saved for 10 years, worked my butt off, and I was so happy to be able to have a place to call my own. Now, being a single person on the mortgage meant I had to make compromises. One such compromise was buying a property on a shared block, a lot cheaper. Where I'm from, usually this means it's on a strata title. For some, that's a bonus, as it means there's a communal fund for repairs. Typically, insurance is cheaper as it's collective, and other things like maintenance being taken care of. Strata titles also come with a lot of bylaws and restrictions on what you can and can't do. I'm a pretty private person, an introverted person, so having to deal with people and have limits on how I live was a no-no. I took my time, found the perfect property, shared block but freehold title, only thing that I was needed to pay public liability insurance for the shared walkway on the property, split equally between owners. The real estate agent is local to my area. There's also about 3 degrees of separation between us. He has friends who are friends with my friends type of thing. Didn't know him, but knew of him, so that sort of felt good too. About 5 months after I move in, I get a knock on the door from the owner, landlord, of the property next to me to discuss insurance. Not a problem. I ask for a copy of the policy so I have a record. It gets sent through, and lo and behold, it's for Strata Insurance. I was incredibly confused, and after much back and forth, the property isn't a freehold title but a strata title. I called my lawyer who conveyed the title, etc. He was dumbfounded, but over it all did the right thing and made things as right as they could. I arranged for a meeting with the real estate agent. I brought emails and printouts of ads they had all saying it was freehold, emails between the real estate agent and my lawyer discussing its freehold status. Despite it being in absolute black and white, he refused to accept any fault or offer to make anything right. I don't begrudge that. He's looking out for himself, I get that. However, I wouldn't forget it. I did enter into mediation with the real estate agent, and all I asked for was, when the time came for me to sell, they would do it or cover the costs. I thought this was reasonable, but they flat out refused, offered me $1,000 to go away, which I refused. I had the option to pursue them legally and was advised by the mediator to do so, but ultimately I decided against it for a few reasons. The main one being my health at the time, so I planned and plotted and I schemed and connived as how to get back at this son of a bench, and I settled on this. I found his personal Facebook page, which wasn't set to private, saw some photos of a boys on tour trip he went on a few weeks prior. So about 5 to 6 months after I bought the property, I also found his address through a business registration search. On the anniversary of the sale, for 6 years straight, I sent them flowers with a note. Dear real estate agent, remembering you on this, our special day, she has your eyes. Love, L. They varied ever so slightly over the years, but always had, on this, our special day, and some weird inference to a love child and a desire to reconnect. I also from time to time arranged for postcards and letters to be sent from another country. The one he was on tour in, always signed, Love L. I learned about 3 weeks ago that this guy had recently divorced, lost his home, and is no longer working as a real estate agent. His wife had found out he cheated on her. The story I was told through said friends of friends went along the lines of he would get weird gifts and flowers every year, same day, every year. She, his wife, finally put 2 and 2 together and realized what the date was, and he admitted to cheating on her. Now, I didn't mean for this, but it turns out a year before I bought my house, he had gone on holiday, came back with an STD, gave it to his wife, but somehow convinced her that it wasn't him. As such, our special day turned out to be right around the time he'd have been balls deep sans condom and someone who wasn't his wife only 1 year earlier. He's apparently lost his house, half his retirement savings, and also his business. I do feel a little bit guilty about all of it sometimes, but then I'm reminded that he's a scumbag and that karma, like me, is a patient, spiteful, and vengeful bench. Don't get me wrong, I love this revenge. I just kind of wish that this story would have went down the path of, by the way, I did pursue legal action and got some kind of rectification for it. Zoreb1 commented, reminds me of an incident in the US concerning O.J. Simpson. The police tried to set up a guilty person. You set up the realtor who was actually guilty of cheating. This next story is, I cut the cheese. Back in the 90s, I worked in a small branch office of 5 employees. I, being British, was kind of the person who would generally see the glass half empty. My boss, American, would see it completely full no matter what. Very Pollyanna-ish to the point of naive, his actions later caused us both to be downsized. Around that time, a book was published called Who Moved My Cheese? A motivational business fable. My boss kept on touting this book, and I eventually ended up reading it. I was not impressed. I agree with the assessment that the book is an attempt by organizational management to make employees quickly and unconditionally assimilate management ideals, even if they may prove detrimental to them professionally. Wikipedia entry, my boss kept trying to persuade me that it was a great book. So from that time onward, I kept referring to the book as Who Cut the Cheese? Slang for farted. After enough times, my boss eventually stopped annoying me about it. Nice and petty. Good thing for me is, if I were in that situation, I probably would never read the book anyways, because as much as I want to, I even went and bought like a really nice Kindle. I just can't find myself bothered to read, maybe because it feels like really kind of all I do is read. Prestigious Moose 345 commented, the purpose of that book was to divide and conquer. to make employees look inward at how they could change their own thoughts and feelings and personal actions to become successful, to distract them from looking outward, distract them from seeing the institution's role in the mass layoffs, distract them from unionizing or collective bargaining or going to the media about overpaid CEOs. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. Now, if you want to hear another awesome revenge story, check out that video on the left. Or if you missed my latest video, check out that video on the right. That said, I'll see you all next time with some more stories.